So, Dr. Jimmy Jarvis, right, welcome to Rect America.
Good afternoon.
How you be, sir?
Uh, Doing pretty well today, thank you. Just getting my sea legs in under the current circumstance, but nothing is constant except change. So
Uh,
we've got more change.
well, for our audience, this is the Hunter again, and I have the pleasure of having Dr. Jimmy Jarvis with us for an interview, Badass Talk with the Hunter. So let me begin just kind of asking with the coronavirus, everything. How are you faring in terms of this environment that we're in?
Hmm. Uh, all considered pretty well. I get a chance to stay in touch with my recovery friends, which is essential for me. I have been in better touch with my partner during these times, which has been useful for both of us, which has been a blessing. So it's certainly a big cloud on the horizon. There's a lot that has gone wrong, that can go wrong, that will go wrong, and yet with every cloud, I have believed for a long time that there is a silver lining, and I'm very grateful for the linings that I've seen so far. And there are more blessings to be had even through all of this. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, there we are. Yeah. So that's a good segue. Can you share for our audience what are some of the acting out behaviors that brought you into the rooms of recovery?
Yeah. Well, I had to search for an addiction that could work for me. Um, it pretty well started as a teenager. Certainly, I'd been experimenting with different things, trying different things, but until my parents were undergoing their divorce, and I was overseas in school, I wasn't really, I didn't feel really driven to find a way of medicating away what I was feeling at that point. Um, and so I tried alcohol, and I've enjoyed alcohol, but it kept making me sick. So that wasn't going to serve my purpose. My purpose, again, I felt the need to just not feel what I was feeling. And so I ended up with sex as the addiction of choice. That and work. I found that I could work and work and work and not worry about anything. And if I could get away from the worry, then things were a lot better. And gosh, when I worked and worked and worked, I got a lot done. And when I got a lot done, I get rewarded. So, so between the work and sex, I I was off to the races.
What age are we talking about?
15, 16, 17,
Mm.
starting mid-teenager.
Mm. So you were engaging in this kind of sexual activity or behavior that early, huh?
Yeah, one form or another, yes. It started. I had seen porn earlier at a friend's house, his father's stash, uh, but it wasn't. I wasn't really driven with a thirst for it until about that age, with some problems going on. Um, and like I say, well, I'd gone overseas, which a blessing in itself to be able to go to high school in Switzerland for a year, and I did really well, and learned a lot, had a lot of fun. But I had access to alcohol, plenty of it, and so I could explore that, and certainly it helped to ease my worry and anxiety about what was going on back in the States. But at the same time, I was it was making me sick. So I needed something that wasn't going to make me so sick so quickly, or at least that's the thinking of a that point 16-year-old. So there it is. Um, but then and again, it was a good testing ground for the workaholism as well. I was able to complete 2 years of high school in 1 year. I took 5 math courses, aced them all. It was fantastic learning opportunity on many fronts. Took O-level and A-level exams in preparation for the British university system. That worked well. So just certainly a lot of reward for working extra hard. Um, and again, the fascination first with pornography and subsequently with finding ways to act out sexually um, drove much of my behavior from that point forward. When I got back to the States, I would make money with a variety of jobs and would find a way to begin to afford prostitutes, escorts, things like this. So my acting out progressed over the years. I thought it would slow down, or actually, I thought it would stop when I got married. So I'd met my sweetheart, love of my life, the next year when I was 17. For a while, she was my fascination and could hold my attention, except for the work. I went to college and finished in 2.5 years, and had all sorts of craziness associated with that. But anyway, but I kept dating this girl. But after a few years, I needed more in the way of medication, so I kept acting out with whether it was porn or when I could afford it, prostitutes.
What was driving you, man? What
Mm-hmm.
is it?
Mm-hmm.
The alcohol or the sex? What was wrong?
Well, it's again, picture the mind of a 15, 16-year-old, okay?
Okay.
And this 15, 16-year-old um, wanted to be master of his universe, and his parents getting divorced was not part of his plan.
Mm.
Uh, Now, again, I'm a lot older than 15, 16, more like 65, 66. But at the same time, yeah, so I know how little control that youngster had over what was going on around him, particularly of other people. But that didn't occur to that young man at that point. So so I know there was torment related to that that was coming up, and it wasn't anything I could do about it. And I was used to being able to do something about anything that I had trouble with. I didn't always do it successfully. There were plenty of times where I couldn't do it successfully, but I could always do something. So I had to do something, or so I thought.
Mm. And in this case, the something was your addictions of choice, or your drug of choice, or your acting out.
Exactly. If I couldn't do something about the situation, then I needed to do something about my emotions. I just needed to quiet them, to, as the term goes, medicate them.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's that's what I was looking for. I remember searching for that. So, you know, short form of the answer.
Yeah. And so you were, you said in terms of you met the love of your life. Now your early college, and so how did this thing, kind of exacerbate? How did it?
Well, again, in college, we went to college 528 miles apart. Not that anybody's counting,
Mm.
except me and the 13 and a half hour bus rides to get to her. So, uh, so that worked well in terms of feeding my need to control things and do things, I could get on a bus, get over there, be with her for a while, get on the bus, get back to my college, do some coursework, things like that. So for a couple of years, the work was excessive, but not the sex, if you will. And after a couple of years, I started getting tired of that routine, and so I started seeking alternatives at keeping up the work, the manic work schedule. Like I said, I graduated in 2.5 years, and I figured, the sex would settle down once I moved over to where my future bride was, and it did for a while. Like I say, the addiction wasn't full blown for quite some time. So this stage, it was what's considered acting in rather than acting out. I mean, I could do it with my partner, and I didn't have any outside needs except to work, and to work a lot, which I did. I subsequently went to graduate school. She went to a different graduate school, but we were only 300 miles apart. And even in midwinter, I could get in front of the snowplows and get across the snow belt and still get to her. So all of this was playing out the backdrop of me deciding I needed to change careers. So after a year of graduate school, I chose not to continue and picked up with some business work in the town where my wife was getting her PhD. And again, I was within range, and things were pretty quiet on the sexual front. And I would work a lot. Until we had time together. So that pattern continued for a while. I moved to my current location. A year or so later, there was an engineering construction company that needed somebody who could speak French to go figure out how much it costs to work in certain parts of Africa. So off I go. My wife was finishing her PhD. I would find ways to visit her on my way to Africa. Again, pretty crazy kind of schedule, looking back at it, but that fit my drivenness at the time. So this continued till we got married in the midst of this. And in fact, our first 6 months of marriage, I think we saw each other about 6 weeks of that period, because most of the time I was overseas. Wow. Mm-hmm. So others do it because they're in the military or other things going on, but in my case, it was a business, work assignment that kept me going. By this point, we'd been dating continuously for 8 years before we got married. Mm-hmm. And my absence from her led to some more acting out sexually. My issues did not resolve just by getting married.
Gotcha. So at what point do we get to discovery and mm-hmm. and even you're hitting bottom?
25 years later.
25 years later.
Yeah. No, I was pretty good at what I did, which is keeping things separate, compartmentalizing. Oh. I had a secret life, and I had a visual life. I had a wife, a daughter, career in banking, a lot going on. And again, working ridiculous hours. And on the side, I would go to massage parlors or see prostitutes, or if I was traveling for business, I would find opportunities to act out on the road, but certainly not always just on the road. Could do it in the town where I was based as well. Anyway, so this continued for quite an extended period of time. As happens with many addictions, it didn't stay the same. It got more and more involved, more and more crazy, and it reached a point where, after multiple rounds of unprotected sex, I did what I thought was impossible, which was I managed to get my wife infected with a sexually transmitted disease. Put her in the hospital. And that was, well, that came out of left field for her, of course. She had no idea by her reaction. And I overstate the case. She knew something was wrong. She knew something that I wasn't responding well to her, and we weren't doing very well as a couple. But she didn't have any idea that this was going on by her reports. Anyway,
you believe that?
It was so horrifying. It absolutely collapsed those Chinese walls I built up between my activities, to the point where I just I needed to face up to them and do something. Do something different.
I asked a question. I guess you didn't hear me. At the point of discovery, and you were that masterful at concealing it that she really didn't know, didn't have a clue.
By her report, that is the case, and that's all I have to go on.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear that she was shocked when I revealed to her what was going on and the extent of it. And subsequently, her writings about the matter corroborate that point of view on it.
And we're understanding. Let me make sure I understand. So we're talking 25 years, and you never got caught.
Right.
Wow.
We're actually talking 33 years.
Now,
because I've been acting out while we were dating. So.
And so you basically led a double life for 33 years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Damn.
I'm good. I'm just saying.
I don't know if I used the word good, but anyway.
Thank you. No. That's another part of me talking.
I don't quite know if that's the right word, but I got the point.
Yes.
Right.
You understand.
I understand. Yeah. So describe what is the I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. What did your quote unquote true bottom look like?
Such a play on the words. My true bottom looked like acting out with transsexual escorts. They were versatile, so was I. So that's kind of the most extreme acting out I did in that addiction. Like I say, I have another addiction as well, and acting out in the work addiction, working 110 hours a week, 6 weeks straight, to install an automated system in the back room of the bank. That's pretty extreme. I got very sick after that. So once again, I backed off of that extremity. That was earlier in life. That was in my early 30s. Anyway, so I've had a couple of different bottoms.
Yeah. During that time, did it ever your sexual identity, I'm not talking about, but was that ever challenged, or for you, were you ever, wondering about, just,
Hmm.
oh,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not
sure.
making any judgments, or I'm just asking you about you. Did it
Hmm.
ever cause you to wonder about your sexual identity? I mean, and
Yeah, a little bit.
mm,
Um, I at this point, I know that I can be attracted to both males and females. Um, I've been primarily heterosexual all my life, but I find that I can be sexually attracted to a bit of both. So that typically falls under the heading of bisexual. As it stands, um, in identifying that in therapy and in understanding how I've shaped myself through my acting out, I've chosen to um, express my sexuality as a heterosexual at this point. But but I do believe, at least for me, from all of my experience, good and bad, that I've got a choice in the matter. And that's just the way it is.
let's go from there.
Mm.
Good and bad.
Hmm.
So we certainly have talked about, quote unquote, maybe some of the bad.
Mm.
Um, is there some good? Is there some upside
Mm.
to this
Hmm.
aspect of the story and experience? I mean, what some good has come of it?
There's tremendous upside. The blessings are beyond imagine. Um, I'm not going to try to piece it all together. I'll focus on where I am today, and maybe some blanks can be filled in between. Um, the process of recovery was basically an opportunity for me to acknowledge what I had been driven by and was running from for the first 50 years of my life, or I'll say most of those first 50 years. I'm not saying as a 5-year-old I was driven necessarily, uh, but there were events even that early which caused me not to want to feel certain emotions. So um, the process of recovery involves some very painful work that I chose to do to begin to understand myself emotionally and become aware of some feelings that have been tormenting me for a long, long time. The whole notion that I thought that I could have some effect on my parents' dissolving marriage is a conclusion that I only make as a result of my recovery work and looking back on what life was like for 14, 15, 16-year-old, for example. That's not a conclusion that 14, 15, 16-year-old necessarily made. Cognitively, he knew that it was his parents' relationship, not his own, but emotionally, there was definitely something missing. So there was a lot of work to do, and having spent 25, 33, 35 years not feeling emotions, it took several years to work through the process of unblocking my emotional and spiritual self so I could begin to have a relationship with myself and a relationship with something beyond myself. I'll call it higher power. All of which was necessary so I could begin to reintegrate myself with the world around me. So, so recovery allowed me to grow up. Recovery allowed me to discover who I am. recovery allowed me to develop an actual relationship with the girl of my dreams that, through no power of my own, I'm still married to.
Mm-hmm.
Blessings are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
None of this is possible without recovery. None of this I had wrecked a marriage. I had put my wife in the hospital with a sexually transmitted disease from a prostitute 3 months after we had a vow renewal 25th anniversary. And my wife was already sick at that point and didn't know why.
Mm.
And from there, we move forward. From there, destroyed as the relationship was, we're still married today.
Mm. How?
Yes. The obvious next question. I have my opinions.
I'm talking to you.
I came to have a different, well, beg pardon?
I'm talking to you.
Okay. Well, my opinion is that I had made some very bad assumptions early on that I was responsible for the relationship I was in. And that's, I have responsibility, but I'm not responsible. It's very different, meaning that my relationship, and it's an example of my relationships elsewhere in the world, my relationship with my wife is not just between myself and my wife. It's a three-way relationship. It's between her, me, and the God of our understanding. Without that, we have no relationship. We've demonstrated that, both of us, each in turn. Because at different times, each of us was walking out the door. We were separated for 3 years during this recovery period, because I was still struggling with my addictions. I was still working on things. And my wife didn't feel safe with me. We weren't there yet. And 10 years ago, she had an experience when I had my medical crisis, where she got the opportunity to choose. So was she going to stay or was she going to go? And without hesitation, she stayed. She chose, as I had chosen by that point too. But it wasn't on either of us to make this work. It was on the two of us doing our parts and God doing his. That's my point of view. So I call recovery right sizing. I had a very distorted view of what I could do and not do. And again, that kind of harkens back to that 15, 16-year-old who thought he had responsibility for things he had no responsibility for. But even as an adult, I played the little master of the universe. I knew I had a secret life. I was always shrinking away from the limelight itself, but I was the man behind the curtain. I was able to run things as the number 2 in organizations, for example. So, and this was, again, because I was playing Master of the Universe, I thought I had responsibility for much, much more than I actually do. And the recovery process gave me a better chance to understand myself, right-sizing myself, letting God be God, and beginning to understand what my part is in the scheme of things.
When you say you, in terms of recovery, understanding yourself, do you feel you understand yourself?
My understanding now is what I call a working knowledge, meaning it is subject to change with new data. New data is being discovered as I have other experiences and relate them back to experiences I've had before. I get a chance to see things differently as I continue to grow. So I'll say this: I understand myself better. And I like myself better now that I have a better understanding of who I am, and again, the right sizing has had a chance to work on me. Is it perfect? No. Uh, but it's a whole lot better than it was 15 years ago when I started this recovery journey.
Does recovery answer the question for you? Does recovery answer um, questions of identity in or does it answer questions of identity? Does recovery answer that for you?
Um, it I want to say this as accurately as I can. Um, Recovery gives me the tools to discover my identity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does it give me my identity? No. It gives me the tools to discover who I am and a better sense for my role in the universe, my part, as I like to say. I have been so fascinated. Uh, my mindset is that of an engineer. I love to know how things work. I always have. Um, Took aptitude tests that suggested I should be an engineer. Resisted it because my wayward father, because he was absent most of my early life, was an engineer, a brilliant one, MIT trained engineer, uh, brilliant guy, and yet that is my mindset, and I am an engineer at heart. So I really love to know how things work, and the recovery process is such an incredible has been such an incredible process for me that I have enjoyed spending time in it, understanding how it works, not just for me, but for others. And also, out of gratitude, sharing what recovery can do with those who are willing to go through it.
Let me ask a question that I think any in the audience listening to and thank your candor and willingness to open up and really not bullshit us and share. I can't thank you enough. I mean, you're really being authentic here and disclosing. So I for the Rec America audience, I say thank you on their behalf. But a question that I'm sure I'm wrestling with, maybe some others, um, it's about identity and given
Yeah.
your experience. Are you, and I get recovery, I ask about does recovery give your identity? What I was trying to ask, what I asked inartfully is, are you sure about your sexuality?
I said before, let me start with yes. Uh, I said before that my knowledge is my knowledge is not set in stone. My knowledge is based on the data that I've received and understand. Okay, and so my knowledge of my sexuality is based on the data I've received and understand. So am I being truthful about my sexuality? Yes. Am I being accurate? I don't know. To the best of my knowledge, I'm being accurate. I I know what I have feelings for, okay, and I have some idea where it might have come from, but um, I want to be as honest as I can be about what I know at this time, and all of my knowledge is subject to change if there's more or different data presented to me. So that's as firm as I can get at this point. But honestly, that's as firm as I get on just about anything these days. I used to be much more self-righteous about everything I knew because I knew it was my way or the highway.
Gotcha.
That's how I created order out of chaos in dysfunctional organizations. Dysfunctional person creating order out of chaos sounds a little bit, uh, what should I say, illusory, but that's the kind of crazy mindset I used to have, where what I knew was set in stone. Well, I don't know anything set in stone anymore. I know my brain's not that big. So that's part of the right sizing that recovery has brought to me.
Mm.
So I'm giving you as clear and as accurate an answer as I can based on the data I have.
Got it.
And if somebody wishes to draw a different conclusion, well, that's their choice.
Mm-hmm. What about shift from there?
Yeah.
You emphasize your from early on the workaholism.
Mm-hmm.
How is that a piece of what also you're wrestling with in recovery? How is the work just being a workaholic? How does that factor into what drives you and what your addiction is all about?
Um, I think in a number of different ways. That one probably started earlier than the sex addiction. Um, as little time as I spent with my dad, it was usually um, in the setting of him working one way or another. Even our vacations were done. We would drive cross country, but only because Dad would set up clients. So his was never a vacation; it was a working vacation. His clients across the country, and we would stop in the various cities. He would go to work while my mom and brother would take care of something, do something. So I had a model for how one is supposed to work. One is supposed to work all the time, every time, be consumed by it. That's what a male role model does. So that was my setup. Now, how did I come to it? Like I say, it was I only did. I'm trying to remember and be accurate as I can. I did well when I worked very, very hard. I was young for my age going into the grades I went into. But with a lot of hard work, I did well and I excelled. And I'd already related the story of my experience at the high school in Switzerland. And so that was that again. I got lots of nice attaboys for that sort of thing, the craziness in college. And when I would get into job settings, I would work harder than anybody else, and I would get rewarded for that. So this pattern, starting early, continued for the next 40 or 50 years, to where I would excel in the various careers that I've had. Newspapers, in financial analysis, in banking, in consulting. I would work harder and longer than anybody else because I thought that's what I needed to do to get ahead and stay ahead. Well, those patterns become pretty well ingrained and fed by my desire to avoid emotional intimacy with myself, meaning I didn't want to feel certain things. I didn't have to feel those things when I was working 70, 80 hours a week, or in the extreme, 110 hours a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And I got rewarded for that. Having successfully installed the system and run the department at the same time, I was promoted, and then I was given a division level job opportunity, which I advanced in 6 months in positions that usually take 5 years to advance in. So I was getting rewarded for that one in my professional life, and that continued to happen in various ways. Like I say, up through probably my mid-50s till I had a medical crisis, resulting in large part because the stress I created myself by setting that and maintaining that pace. At a certain point, the body breaks. And
Yeah.
mine did.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to explore, and certainly one conversation can't cover it all. Dr. Jarvis, we'll have to have you back. But let me just ask this question as we kind of put a pin in it for now. What's next for you?
What is next for me? I'd like to know what God has next for me. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, which is working with others in recovery, sharing what was so freely shared with me. I absolutely love it, and I believe with all my heart that this is the soul of my mission at this point. That's not to say that I won't be doing something else in 10 years. I don't know. But for now, my work in recovery with individuals and in the organizations of recovery is my passion, along with my grandsons.
Amen. Well, Dr. Jarvis, thank you, and thank you for being with us today and this badass talk. And we'll have you back soon, and we'll explore some more. All right.
Look forward to it.
And we'll pick it up there. All right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wish you all the best. Stay safe.
And you. Thank you, Hunter.
All right. Talk to you soon.